Welcome to this special training for cooperative teachers. We appreciate you providing us a few moments of your time and allowing us to describe this new approach for assessing the performance and supporting the growth of your teacher candidate. We begin this training with opening comments from our Commissioner of Education, Dr. Margie Van Dieven.
On behalf of the department, I want to thank you for inviting a teacher candidate into your classroom for a chance to practice what has been learned, and especially for the opportunity to receive professional feedback from you. You are helping prepare excellent teachers for the future as we continue our journey to be one of the top 10 states in student performance by 2020. As a cooperating teacher, you play a critical role as a model and mentor. You are helping your teacher candidate develop his or her personal teaching style. We look to you to model what it means to be an effective teacher. I encourage you to offer direct feedback when you think it is needed, but also to acknowledge your teacher candidate's strengths when you see professional growth. Encourage reflective dialogue around what is observed in your classroom. I hope you will fully integrate your teacher candidate into the life of your school. You are the source of much knowledge your candidate will gain about schools and school communities during your time together. Your candidate will look to you to see what it means to be a caring and nurturing teacher with high expectations for all students. Your willingness to model reflective practice, to ask questions about your own teaching, to welcome feedback, and to demonstrate a commitment to continuous improvement will have a powerful positive effect on your teacher candidate. Our hope is that you too will reap the benefits through additional insight into your own practice. When this type of professional collaboration occurs between you and your teacher candidate, the most important outcome is the benefit that the children in your classroom will receive. I am confident this online training will prepare you for the significant responsibility of being a cooperating teacher. And thank you again for being a critical part of the preparation of Missouri's next generation of teachers.
The important learning outcomes for this training include creating consistency statewide among all cooperating teachers like you in supporting and developing your teacher candidate, enhancing your skills in providing meaningful feedback to your teacher candidate to help the candidate grow and develop and be classroom ready as a first-year teacher, and creating a common understanding of the process and the forms to be used in assessing your teacher candidate's performance. As an effective teacher, you're already skilled at many different teaching strategies, including student engagement, differentiated lesson design, managing your classroom, and using data effectively. As a cooperating teacher, you have an important role in helping to increase the knowledge and skill of your teacher candidate in essential skills like these. As a cooperating teacher, you'll be a valuable resource and serve as a model to your teacher candidate. Some valuable ways you can help your teacher candidate include: introduce the teacher candidate to your colleagues, arrange visits to other classrooms, facilitate meeting and getting to know school staff, help your teacher candidate get familiar with school procedures and policies, offer sound advice about good practice, give guidance on what works, what doesn't, and why, provide teaching tips, share deep knowledge about students and the school, model professionalism, demonstrate high-quality instruction. The clinical experience, known also as student teaching, is an opportunity for teacher candidates to demonstrate what has been learned throughout preparation. Through the educator preparation process, your teacher candidate has been learning how to be an effective teacher. The skills needed to be effective are defined generally in these 9 areas. From this preparation program, your teacher candidate has received basic knowledge and understanding about how these areas define the candidate as an effective teacher. During the clinical experience, known also as student teaching, the teacher candidate now has the opportunity to demonstrate skills in these areas. Missouri has 9 teacher standards. These include content knowledge, learning growth and development, curriculum implementation, critical thinking, classroom management, effective communication, use of data, professionalism, and professional collaboration. Each of the 9 standards is further defined by quality indicators. For example, Standard 1, Content Knowledge, has 5 quality indicators. Standard 2, Learning Growth and Development, has 6. These 36 quality indicators define the knowledge and skills of an effective teacher. Certain quality indicators, shown here in blue, have been found to be particularly important for beginning teachers. As a cooperating teacher, you'll help your teacher candidate effectively demonstrate competence in these 16 areas. Out of the 16 quality indicators, there are 4 high-leverage skills in which all teacher candidates must demonstrate mastery in order to be successful as a first-year teacher. These include demonstrating how to engage students in learning content, demonstrating how to differentiate instruction to meet the various learning needs of students, demonstrating the ability to use data to inform decisions about instructional practice, and demonstrating the use of a variety of management techniques in order to ensure the effective delivery of instruction. As your teacher candidate demonstrates the ability to engage students, the candidate may choose to use some of these strategies, such as pausing after asking a question but before picking a student to answer, scanning the room and intentionally engaging those students that seem disengaged, or linking new content knowledge to previous knowledge students already have. It's important to note that this is not an exhaustive list or a checklist of strategies that your teacher candidate must demonstrate to show knowledge of how to increase student engagement. Rather, it's a sample of types of strategies that effective teachers use to increase student engagement, and they could be ones that you'll see your teacher candidate use. As your teacher candidate demonstrates the ability to differentiate how to provide instruction in order to meet the various needs of students, your candidate may choose to use some of these strategies, such as organizing students into small groups to facilitate their learning, using alternate assessments to clearly identify students' level of learning, or knowing the learning characteristics of each student. Again, it's important to note this is not an exhaustive list or a checklist of strategies your teacher candidate must use, but rather a sample of some ways effective teachers can meet the different needs of their students. As your teacher candidate demonstrates management techniques to ensure instruction is disrupted as little as possible, your candidate may choose to use some of these strategies, such as physical movement and proximity, using gestures and signals to address off-task or misbehavior, or establishing routines and procedures. As already mentioned, it's important to note this is not an exhaustive list or a checklist of strategies your teacher candidate must do to indicate competence in classroom management. Rather, it's a sample of types of strategies that all effective teachers use to effectively manage classroom activities and student behaviors to allow for a conducive learning environment. One final reminder, the teacher candidate needs to follow the rules and procedures established with or by their cooperating teacher. As your teacher candidate demonstrates the ability to use data to make informed decisions to more effectively provide instruction to students, your candidate may choose to use some of these strategies, such as using scales and rubrics, consistently tracking student progress, or the use of exit tickets. Once again, it's important to note this is not an exhaustive list or a checklist they must demonstrate, but rather a sample of types of strategies your teacher candidate might demonstrate while showing knowledge of the importance of data for informing the instructional process. As a cooperating teacher, you can look to your university supervisor for guidance and support. Collaboration between you and the university supervisor is essential to ensure the success of the teacher candidate and to prepare that person for a seamless transition into the classroom as a professional educator. As a cooperating teacher, you have a very important role. You provide ratings on key indicators of performance. You give valuable feedback that helps your teacher candidate grow and develop. You model professional collaboration with the university supervisor. And you capture important information on forms that are a necessary component of the teacher candidate's certification. This clinical experience is the last and best chance to support the teacher candidate and provide meaningful, descriptive feedback in a focused, intentional way to improve teaching practice. There are forms that are used to facilitate this process. The Teacher Candidate Performance Rubric will assist in guiding the discussions between you and your teacher candidate. There is a separate rubric for each of the 16 high-leverage quality indicators. Each rubric has a companion document called the Possible Sources of Evidence, also known as look-fors. The rubric provides focus for 3 areas of evidence. The first is commitment, which is the preparation to teach. The second is practice, which is the actual teaching. And the final one is impact, which is student performance data. All rows on the rubric are important for providing guidance. The first row on the rubric is a general description of the performance at each level. These include baseline, emerging, and developing. The second row suggests areas of evidence that indicate performance is occurring. The third row offers examples of possible observable data and is more specific in identifying what you might actually see in the classroom. The fourth row is available for comments, and in the final row is where a rating is provided. This form should be used during observations to take notes, record ratings of performance, and guide feedback. The Teacher Candidate Performance Rubric is a first step towards consistency statewide. It allows all supervisors, cooperating teachers, teacher candidates, and administrators to use common language and share a collective focus. Keep in mind you do not expect to see everything every time you observe. You might see 1 or 2 of the teacher behaviors and 1 or 2 of the student behaviors with each visit. The important thing is to get a sense of how well the teacher performs in these areas over time. Also keep in mind that the lists of possible sources of evidence are just that. They're possible sources. You'll likely be able to add other things you see that are important data regarding your teacher candidate's performance for the indicator. The clinical experience is a process about growth. It's a teacher candidate's opportunity to apply what's been learned. Using the performance rubric and with your support as their cooperating teacher, the teacher candidate grows or moves along the rubric for these important quality indicators. It's critical that the selected 16 quality indicators are the focus for observation and feedback between you and your teacher candidate. To accurately assess the performance of your teacher candidate using the performance rubric, it's important to understand the process for scoring performance. This scoring process is a new way of looking at teacher candidates during the clinical experience. Your teacher candidate can receive scores of 0, 1, 2, or 3. A score of 0 baseline is not an indication that your teacher candidate cannot do something, as much as it is an indication that your candidate has not done it yet. At the beginning of the clinical experience, all teacher candidates start at this point and only move to the next levels, a 1, 2, or 3, by demonstrating the performance at those levels. After being observed teaching, your teacher candidate can then earn a higher rating. By using effective feedback from you, your candidate can move to the highest level. Remember, it's about growth over the time that they're with you. With your support and feedback, teacher candidates move from knowing about a skill, which is a 0 baseline, to demonstrating a skill, which is a 1 or a 2, to an enhanced demonstration of a skill, which is a 3. A score of 1 emerging indicates the teacher candidate has demonstrated this particular skill on the rubric, although performance of it may still be inconsistent and only somewhat effective. A score of 2 emerging indicates the teacher candidate has consistently and effectively demonstrated this particular skill on the rubric. The rubric will guide you as to the status of the teacher candidate during the observation. Like any rubric, it can't speak to everything that's going to occur. However, it does provide guidance for you as the cooperating teacher to help your teacher candidate improve their performance. It's extremely important during the post-observation conversation with your teacher candidate that you help the candidate realize current level of performance and what can be done to improve performance and move across the rubric. As you do this, you are building and supporting the reflective nature of your teacher candidate. As a teacher, it takes a real commitment to making the time to be reflective about your practice. As a cooperating teacher, you can begin to instill in your teacher candidate the importance of this reflective practice. A score of 3 developing indicates the teacher candidate is demonstrating the skill at the emerging level and also at the developing level. This score represents the teacher candidate's ability to demonstrate the skill beyond what's called for at the emerging level. Ultimately, it's our hope that all teacher candidates aspire to be a developing teacher. But remember, that designation is determined by observable evidence based on demonstration of the performances articulated in the quality indicators. It's important to keep in mind the ultimate goal of this entire process is not about receiving scores. It's to ensure that teacher candidates become successful and effective as a first-year teacher. Data from observations are captured on the Teacher Candidate Formative Assessment Form. This form is used to provide feedback on the standards for which teacher candidates are held accountable. It's used each time you observe the practice of your teacher candidate. A new copy of this form should be completed during each observation. Notice the comments portion of the form. This written feedback should be in addition to, not instead of, verbal feedback. Please note, the only required signature is by the university supervisor and the teacher candidate. A signature by you, the cooperating teacher, is optional. Your teacher candidate will hopefully receive feedback from you throughout the clinical experience. Some of this is informal and some of it's formal. Using the formative assessment form, your teacher candidate will receive a numerical rating and feedback from observations you conduct as your candidate teaches. Keep in mind that teacher candidates need feedback on all 16 indicators throughout the clinical experience. As indicated, this particular teacher candidate formative assessment form is completely optional. Some universities choose to use this form while others do not. The university supervisor that you work with will be able to assist you on if and how this form is used. The overall purpose of this form is to provide additional feedback to your teacher candidate. The optional teacher candidate formative assessment can be very useful during observations, particularly those done early in the clinical experience. It assists you as the cooperating teacher in getting a big picture of the classroom and to note teacher-student interactions. It provides a general snapshot of a number of different things happening between the teacher candidate and the students. It serves as a valuable point of discussion between you and your teacher candidate. The teacher candidate summative assessment is the form used at the end of the clinical experience. It's designed to capture final ratings on the performance of the teacher candidate on the 16 quality indicators for which the candidate is held accountable. It's also used as a place to put final comments on the overall performance of the teacher candidate throughout the clinical experience. Please note, the only required signature is by university supervisor and teacher candidate. A signature by you as cooperating teacher is optional. This form, used to tabulate scores, includes a column for ratings from the cooperating teacher, for the university supervisor, and also a column for the building principal or other designated administrator, should they choose to provide a performance rating and feedback to your teacher candidate. While ratings from your building's administrator are encouraged, it's not required. The university supervisor is ultimately responsible for the final rating and teacher candidate grade. Each university sets its own policies and procedures on determinations of grades and performance ratings. Data from this last page is entered by the university supervisor and is submitted to the student-teacher office. This data is then submitted to DESE as a part of the teacher candidate's certification requirements. The summative form is used by the university supervisor and the cooperating teacher at the conclusion of the clinical experience. All 16 quality indicators are assessed and addressed on the summative form. The form is also used to capture final feedback on the teacher candidate's overall performance. You'll note again that the building administrators are invited and encouraged to provide feedback on 4 of the 16 quality indicators. Feedback from a building administrator can be very valuable to a teacher candidate. Building administrators or someone they designate are invited to provide a rating and feedback to the teacher candidate on 4 essential indicators. While this is encouraged as an important source of additional feedback in helping teacher candidates be ready to be a first-year teacher, as noted, it's not required. Perhaps the most important role you have as a cooperating teacher is providing meaningful, timely, actionable feedback to your teacher candidate. A very strong body of research maintains that in order to grow, you have to get feedback. This is true for training dogs, coaching athletes, and raising children, and is certainly true for your teacher candidate as well. Your feedback can help your teacher candidate improve on the skills needed to be an effective first-year teacher. This example provides a strategy for delivering effective feedback to your teacher candidate. Begin by identifying a teacher candidate behavior that links directly with one of the quality indicators. Then, link the teacher candidate's behavior to a specific student response that you observed. Generate a couple of reflective questions to help your teacher candidate begin to think about how performance as a teacher relates to responses from students as learners. The use of reflective questions communicates to your teacher candidate the importance and value of being reflective about one's practice. As a teacher, this takes a real commitment of your time and attention, but it pays off. Effective teachers are reflective teachers. Here's an example where a cooperating teacher notes that the teacher candidate calls for a solo response first, before having students share their responses. The cooperating teacher then ties this strategy to the impact it had on student learning. The reflective questions get the teacher candidate thinking about how well the strategy worked, what other assessment strategies are effective for achieving the same outcome, and how to effectively use assessment strategies in the future. Here's an example tied specifically to Quality Indicator 1.2, Student Engagement and Content. The cooperating teacher notes a student not understanding the concept on which the teacher candidate is providing instruction. The cooperating teacher notes the strategy the teacher candidate used to re-engage the student and the student's response. Through reflective questioning, the cooperating teacher gets the teacher candidate to think about how the candidate perceived the overall level of student engagement during the lesson, to consider different strategies to increase engagement, and ways to use engagement strategies to strengthen the lesson. Here's an example of feedback tied to Quality Indicator 2.4, Differentiated Lesson Design. The cooperating teacher notes that the teacher candidate used grouping to enhance the lesson and proximity to assess how students were doing with the content. The cooperating teacher observed how this strategy created information on how students were doing that could then be used for planning future instruction on this content. Through reflective questions, the cooperating teacher prompts the teacher candidate to share thinking about the use of small groups, to reflect on what was learned about the thinking of the students, and how to build on this strategy as the teacher candidate continues to instruct on this particular objective. Here's an example of feedback tied to Quality Indicator 5.1, Classroom Management Techniques. The cooperating teacher highlights several different management techniques the teacher candidate used to ensure that instruction would not be interrupted by student off-task or misbehavior. The cooperating teacher points out the specific behavior of one student in response to the teacher candidate's techniques. The cooperating teacher then uses reflective questions to prompt the teacher candidate to reflect on how well the techniques worked, to share how the candidate set expectations with students, to talk about the decision-making process used in determining when redirection is necessary, and to think about what other support the teacher candidate might need in order to continue to develop effective classroom management techniques. Here's one final example on feedback tied to Quality Indicator 7.2, using assessment data to improve learning. The cooperating teacher notes that the teacher candidate used an exit ticket strategy at the end of the lesson. The cooperating teacher observes how this assisted the teacher candidate in formatively assessing the extent of learning that occurred as a result of the lesson. The cooperating teacher uses reflective questions to explore the teacher candidate's thinking about the use of exit tickets as an assessment strategy, to probe how the teacher candidate will use what the candidate learned from the student's responses, to explore other types of formative assessment strategies, and to determine what other areas about formative assessment the teacher candidate might like to know more about. We hope you found this training helpful for understanding this new process for evaluating and supporting teacher candidates. We hope we have effectively communicated how very important your role is as a cooperating teacher. We sincerely appreciate your willingness to share your professional expertise and experience with your teacher candidate. You have an essential role in shaping the future of education in Missouri. For any additional questions you may have, please contact the university supervisor of your teacher candidate. You're also welcome to contact Educator Preparation in the Office of Educator Quality at DESE at the number shown here. Thank you again, and we hope you have a great school year.